The price of beef rising on your grocery bill. That has President Trump floating a plan to cut the cost.
We would buy some beef from Argentina. If we do that, that will bring our beef prices down.
Now there's backlash from Texas ranchers.
Feed them American feed, process them here, truck them with American trucks. All of that is American made, not done in Argentina.
We look closer at a new proposal that aims to balance helping ranchers and cutting costs for consumers. Millions of Texans face big cuts to food benefits as a result of the government shutdown.
I don't know what to do because we're already struggling. We are.
How food banks are trying to fill the void. Big changes at the border. We go deeper into what's behind a surge in enforcement along the Rio Grande.
Produced from the Capitol in Austin and airing statewide, this is the award-winning State of Texas.
Hello and thank you for joining us. I'm Josh Hinkle. The price of beef has been steadily rising. You probably noticed the effect on your grocery bill. It's caught the attention of President Trump as well. Last weekend, he called for importing more beef from Argentina to help cut costs. But that sparked backlash from Texas ranchers. As Dylan McKim reports, it's led to a new proposal to boost beef production without turning to foreign imports.
A little bit of a disagreement on how to lower the beef prices.
Sid Miller, the Agriculture Commissioner of the largest beef-producing state in the country, is not seeing eye to eye with the president and his suggestion to import more beef from Argentina to lower costs for consumers. Miller says more focus needs to be on growing the supply of cattle in America, which is at its lowest in 75 years.
We just don't have beef to sell. That's the problem.
We need to reshore a lot of our industries in this country, and cattle production and beef production is one of them.
The Independent Cattlemen's Association of Texas does not support any increase in foreign beef to the American market. In fact, its director says he believes the beef is at a good value as ranchers deal with higher input costs.
He's not making hand over fist. He's paying off debt.
Miller released his own 5-step proposal to help Texas beef producers. One idea is to safely resume imports of cattle from Mexico, which has been paused because of the New World screwworm, a parasite that could wreak havoc on the cattle industry. That idea is not supported by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, but Miller also calls for some type of tax credit to incentivize ranchers to hold on to female cows.
That would encourage them. They would start keeping heifers immediately, and that rebuilds our herd.
At Lubbock Feeders, a West Texas feed yard, their cattle pens are half full. Manager Kyle Williams said supporting any plan to grow the cattle population will help beef prices in the long run.
You give an American an incentive, we're going to figure out how to make it happen. There's no doubt in my mind that we will.
Dylan McKim, State of Texas.
We spoke at length with Ag Commissioner Sid Miller about his proposal. Capitol correspondent Adam Schwager pushed Miller to go deeper into his call to expand cattle imports from Mexico, which are currently blocked amid concern about spreading the parasitic screwworm.
Now, one way to lower the beef price overnight is to, instead of importing beef in a box, is import it live on the hoof, and we can do that. We've got a year's worth of feeder cattle stacked up in Mexico. We get about 15% of our feeder cattle every year out of Mexico, but we didn't get any this year because it was shut down because of the screwworm. We can methodically open that up very carefully so we don't bring in the screwworm, and that would immediately, the board would be off the limit on the price of beef. Not only do we have a year's worth backed up, but it's time for the next year's stuff to come in now. We're into the second season. So that would be, a lot more cattle on the market. That's the reason we have high prices. We don't have enough cattle. Open the ports, bring in the cattle, feed them American feed, process them here, truck them with American trucks. All of that is American made, not done in Argentina.
Right. Speaking of the screwworm threat, when you're talking about importing live cattle, how do you make sure that we do it in a way that keeps that screwworm threat out? Because obviously that could mean even more livestock culling if it gets out of control here on this side of the border.
Well, it's pretty simple. Before any cattle are imported, they go to a quarantine pen for several days. United States veterinarians have to inspect each and every one of them. They're dipped for parasites, which would eliminate the screwworm. You can give them a shot of Dectomax or ivermectin, which is an anti-parasitic drug. It would kill any screwworms that if they were infected. And then they come across, again, they're quarantined for a few days. We watch them. there's virtually no chance of bringing an animal in that has screwworm infection. So I think we can safely bring those in, replenish our feedlots. Our feedlots are down to about 60, 70, 80% capacity. We really need those cattle, and the American consumer needs them too, to bring down the price of beef.
Have you talked to the USDA about that? What are their thoughts on that proposal?
Well, they haven't been willing to do that. They actually opened it up last May, but we had a screwworm case pretty close to the border, so they decided to shut it back down, and it's remained closed. There's a season for that. Usually from November through February is when those cattle come in. So it really hadn't been a big need to open it up until now. So we're getting into that season for those ranchers in Mexico. They're weaning their cattle, and they need someplace to go with them. And we usually buy those so we can graze them on winter grazing, like wheat and oats and rye, winter pasture.
And then I know you mentioned tariffs. Is there anything that you think the president could change in his tariff policy that would help the cattle prices?
Well, it's not that people aren't buying our beef. We just don't have beef to sell. That's the problem. So the tariffs are not as big an issue on our producers. What he's actually doing is lowering the tariffs on Argentine beef, bringing about 5 times as much beef from Argentina as we're currently allowing them to bring in. And it's very low tariffs. Right now it's very low tariffs, but they've maxed out their quota. So this would be 5 times more than they in the past have been able to bring in, which should lower the price of hamburger. But I think it's only going to lower the price of hamburger, which would be good to consumers. It'd be something. But these other 5 things, if we implement those, I think we get a broader, more palatable cost reduction that doesn't harm the cattle producer and still benefits the consumer.
If you could help me kind of explain a little bit more about why that Argentine beef is so low quality compared to, yeah.
Well, number one, our beef for the most part here is grain fed. They don't have feedlots. It's grass fed, and the breeds are different. Most of their breeds are Brahman influenced, which is a very tough, stringy. It's just not tender meat. I'm not knocking if you're, but they raise those because of the tropical climate. They're resistant to the heat and the parasites and insects. The breeds we have here in Texas just wouldn't work down there. So they use what they can, but it's not the high quality beef that we raise here in Texas.
Just to wrap up here, I know when I go to the grocery store, I feel it. I think a lot of consumers do feel it when they're buying beef in the grocery store. Where are we at in terms of beef price inflation right now in the state of Texas?
Well, it's up. It's probably at an all-time high, but it's really, when you look at it, it's not really out of line compared to a $7 cup of coffee at Starbucks. That $14 a pound steak, it's not so high, is it?
Well, thank you so much, Commissioner Miller. Talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you. God bless.
Mexico's agriculture minister is scheduled to travel to Washington next week to discuss potentially reopening the border to Mexican cattle imports. We want to give you perspective of the scale of those imports. A report from the USDA shows that the U.S. imported close to 1.25 million head of cattle from Mexico in 2024. This year, less than 250,000 head have come in. One consulting group estimates the gap could cost Mexican cattle producers nearly $800 million. The state says there may be hundreds of people illegally registered to vote in Texas. We look at what happens next for those people and how it could affect the election underway now. There's something new on the Rio Grande. We look closer at the changes happening now with the goal of boosting border security. The Office of the Texas Secretary of State announced it identified more than 2,700 people who may be illegally registered to vote in the state. The office said it used a federal database to help determine the citizenship status of voters on the registration list. Capitol correspondent Dylan McKim explains what happens next for these voters and how it could affect the current election.
County election officials in Texas are already operating early voting. Now they will have to simultaneously investigate claims of potential non-citizens on their registration list. 7 Texas counties have more than 100 voters on their registration log who may not be eligible to vote. according to the Secretary of State's office. Election officials will send each voter in question this form in the mail, asking them to provide proof of their citizenship within 30 days or be removed from the registration list.
It is a very unique situation that we're in right now.
Chris McGinn is the executive director of the Texas Association of County Election Officials. He says carrying out these type of investigations is a normal process, but doing it this close to Election Day is unheard of.
If somebody on this list does vote and then they do not provide confirmation that they are a citizen in 30 days, in theory, their vote would have counted for this constitutional amendment before they're purged from our list.
Also unique is how the Secretary of State's office created this list. More than 18 million names from the Texas voter registration log were pumped through something called the SAVE database. The database is operated by U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. It allows state agencies to verify citizenship status. Secretary of State Jane Nelson said it's the first time her agency has been able to use the database for this purpose, calling it a game changer. But when Attorney General Ken Paxton sued the Biden administration to gain access to the SAVE database, a spokesperson with the Department of Homeland Security told our newsroom last October that Texas already had access to the database. We reached out to the Secretary of State's office to clarify that discrepancy. A spokesperson tells us the office did not have access until March this year. Dylan McKim, State of Texas.
The federal database was used this past summer to match the names of people who voted in the November 2024 presidential election. The Secretary of State's office found 33 people may have voted illegally in that election and referred them to the Texas Attorney General. Our team reached out to the AG's office for an update on those cases. We have not received a response. Funding to help needy Texans buy food could soon dry up. How the shutdown could cut SNAP benefits, and who's stepping up to help meet the growing need. The Coast Guard deploys to the Rio Grande.
The threat out here is evolving, and it's always changing.
We look at what's behind their mission and why they're launching it now. The U.S. Coast Guard has a new mission along the border. Dozens of Coast Guard vessels have started patrolling the Rio Grande. The surge comes shortly after signs went up on buoys in the river, warning that the Rio Grande is now a military zone. It's part of a new national defense area announced a couple of months ago. These are significant changes, and joining us now to break it all down is Sandra Sanchez from Border Report. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Josh.
So first off, what does it mean to declare the Rio Grande a military zone?
Yeah, it's a national defense area. 250 miles of the Rio Grande, that's in the entire Hidalgo and Cameron counties, are a military zone, part of actually Joint Base San Antonio. So what it means is if someone crosses into that land, you could face additional charges. And if someone is undocumented coming from Mexico, they could face even more charges. We have been monitoring the court systems, and so far those extra charges have not been levied, but just anyone crossing into this zone could face 6 months in prison, $100,000 fine. I mean, it really ups the ante down there.
You also found that there will be more buoy barriers on the Rio Grande. We've talked a lot about those lately. What's happening there? Yeah,
big news this week. Actually, Customs and Border Protection very quietly placed on their website earlier this week that they are building, we knew, a smart wall system. We knew that we're having 80 miles of border buoys put up in the Rio Grande, 17 miles in Cameron County, 40 miles near Eagle Pass, 23 miles near Del Rio, but they never said what it was going to be made of. Now we know they are individualized giant flotation devices, kind of like the border buoys that Governor Abbott put up, only he only put up a 1,000-foot long string for $1 million. The one in Cameron County is 17 miles long, $96 million. So, yeah, a lot of questions. Is it going to be continuous because the river has oxbows and, you know, is always meandering? We don't know the answers to these questions. Also, the smart wall system is going to have a lot of technology, cameras, special roads, special audio. So it's not just buoys, but they could either be 4 feet wide or 6 feet wide in diameter. And it does raise a lot of questions.
Yeah, a big change there. You've also been covering the new Coast Guard operations on the Rio Grande. What are they doing there, and why is this happening now?
Yeah, it's called Operation Riverwall. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, she's really trying to improve up the profile of the Coast Guard, which is actually under the Department of Homeland Security. And under Riverwall, they are going to surge 100 Coast Guard boats. They've already started. They announced this one night, and the next morning I was out on the shore catching what appeared to be a flotilla. I caught 7 boats in a row. There was some Border Patrol there. Hundreds of personnel are surged to the area. And this is just to start with 100 boats. Normally we think of the Coast Guard on the Gulf. We don't really think of them so much on the river, but recently I had a ride along and a fly along with them, and they're and it was on the river and over the Gulf, but they're really trying to show that they have, she says, these maritime border security super skills, and she wants to use them to defend the border.
So we know that the Coast Guard officials are being paid during the government shutdown. What about other border security law enforcement?
There's been so much back and forth about that. This past week, Congressman Henry Cuellar, he is a Democrat who was at one point the ranking member of the House Homeland Security Appropriations Subcommittee. He told me that any border security federal officer on the front lines is getting paid. My colleague in San Diego says he's been told by some Border Patrol agents they're actually not getting paid. But Cuellar says that they are paying those who are actively working to secure the border. This could include marshals, this could include rangers, this could include Border Patrol, this could include Customs and Border Protection officers, ICE officers. So, money has been set aside. We know Coast Guard is being paid. We know the military are being paid.
Really shows the financial priority of this administration.
It does.
Thank you very much, Sandra Sanchez from the Border Report.
Thank you.
The stalemate over the shutdown continues in Washington, but it could soon hit home for millions of Texans.
I don't know what to do because we're already struggling. We are.
Funding that helps people buy food is at risk. We look at what's at stake. A vote to pay some federal workers during the government shutdown failed to pass the Senate. It's the latest failure to reach a deal to reopen the federal government. After the vote, senators adjourned until Monday. The Republican-led measure called for paying employees who are still required to work during the shutdown, including military members and air traffic controllers. Both sides are blaming the other as the shutdown drags on.
Right now at airports all across America, there are 50,000 TSA agents who are going into work. They're not getting paid. There are 14,000 air traffic controllers who are going into work. They're not getting paid. You know what the result of that is? We're seeing more and more flight delays. We're seeing cancellations. In Houston Hobby Airport last night, we had a ground stop in place because of a shortage of staffing for air traffic controllers. This is putting real pain on the American people, and Chuck Schumer and the Democrats are doing this out of political petulance.
Senate Democrats say they're holding out to negotiate a deal to protect Americans' health care. They say it's up to Republicans to end the shutdown.
Nobody likes, the shutdown, and I think it shows the dysfunction. But remember, this is the Republicans' House, the Senate, and the White House. They've got control over this. Let's solve the problem that's in front of us. And the problem is, for my constituents, are going to have to choose between health care and rent or health care and food.
The impasse comes as millions of Texans face losing benefits for food as a result of the government shutdown. Federal funding for the Supplemental Food Assistance and Nutritional Program will run out if the shutdown lasts past Monday. The program, known as SNAP, provides funds to help people with low incomes buy food. Capitol correspondent Adam Schwager looks closer at the strain this could have on those who rely on SNAP and on food banks working to fill the void.
I don't know what to do because we're already struggling.
Heather Penny is going through a rough time. The Gatesville woman takes care of 2 of her 3 kids solely on her fiance's salary after she was let go while dealing with her parents' sickness. In this time, she's relied on SNAP to help keep food on the table, especially for her son with disruptive mood dysregulation disorder.
He relies on those snacks to get him from lunch to dinner and even breakfast to lunch. And if he doesn't get it and we try to explain to him, he's not fully comprehending what we're telling him. So
food banks have already seen an increased demand because of the government shutdown. In San Antonio today, first hour and 20 minutes they were open, the food bank found that 119 individuals had been in that line because of the government shutdown. But that pales in comparison to what they could be up against on Monday.
In 10 meals that someone who's low income gets, 9 of those are SNAP and 1's from a food bank.
Michael Guerra is the Chief Philanthropy Officer at the San Antonio Food Bank. He's confident that experience through COVID and through hurricanes have proven Texas can handle this shutdown, but it won't be easy.
It means that we're just going to have to ration. We do ration food a bit now because there is more need than we have food. But if we have to have need that's 2, 3, 4x of what we normally can serve, we won't be able to scale that fast.
Even then, SNAP offers flexibility a food bank simply can't, especially for someone with young kids.
they won't eat. I try to teach them to not be picky, but it's hard.
For State of Texas, I'm Adam Schwager.
Expiring health insurance subsidies are at the heart of Democrats' shutdown demands, but as the shutdown drags on, it's becoming less likely Congress will be able to extend them through the regular appropriations process. This affects people who get health insurance through the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. Enrollment for those plans begins on November 1st. Without extending subsidies, millions of people will face significantly higher monthly health insurance premiums when they start shopping for 2026 coverage. Expanded subsidies began during the COVID-19 pandemic. Extending them will require a bipartisan deal in Congress. Thank you again for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle. We'll be back next week to bring you an in-depth look at Texas politics.